Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, whoever you may be, wherever you are in the world. The time is 10:54 a.m. It's January 16th, 2013. And I just feel the need to convey this message via video because I've written it down, but I don't think people like to read. I know it's very difficult to read something long and drawn out in a world where pretty much everything is instantaneous. Attention span is very short, so I'm hoping maybe you will be compelled to just listen to me read the statement that I've written for something that I feel is extremely important in terms of what's going on based upon everything that's happening in the world, specifically regarding the gun debate, the issue with crime, and how, to me, there's a specific aspect of this whole narrative that I don't think is being focused on, and I think it's extremely important to create a better world by focusing on this particular issue. And I hope you will bear with me as I read what I've written already, and leave some feedback or just lend me your ear. I would appreciate it if you would find the time to do that. So here we go. Just read it exactly as I wrote it. After reading this article on CNN.com, all of the articles, by the way, are on my Facebook page, so you can reference them, because it's kind of hard to listen to what I'm saying without referencing these articles in the graph that I have on my Facebook page. As well as an additional article within the past 2 days about what the movie Lincoln missed. That's what the first article is pertaining to, and crime as it relates to poor black communities, respectively. Watching the series that was referred to by the first article on WKNO or PBS, and reviewing the startling statistic provided by Pew Research Center in regards to net worth from blacks to whites to Asians to Hispanics. Watching the gun debate, use the violence in Chicago to make a point about gun control on both sides, as well as the successful debut of blockbuster films such as Lincoln and Django Unchained. And as we approach today, we honor the assassination of a man who died during his quest to combat poverty. I not only feel compelled, but I feel it's my duty as a businessman and a leader to use this platform, which can reach the masses around the world, to share what I feel is the most important set of words I've ever written, as well as the most meaningful task I have ever embarked upon in my entire life. I ask you to read, or in this particular case, listen to what I have to say, and simply accept it. Either way, it can't be undone. Sorry for the long text, or in this case, the long, drawn-out narrative. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. There was an aspect of the article that I was referencing, the most polarizing aspect of the article that I feel America needs to see, read, acknowledge, and most importantly, understand. In my opinion, there's an outstanding accounts payable that needs to be brought current. For those of you all know what accounts payable is, it's accounting 101. In other words, it is a bill that's due that you would have on your books in any business. If you have terms or extended credit, normally there's an accounts payable attached to that particular expense that's due. And I feel that America has an outstanding accounts payable. And it couldn't be more of a perfect time for this fiscal matter for Congress to discuss, because they're having a discussion over the debt limit. Beautiful. And since this debt in question is the bill that has been longest overdue in America's long line of accrued debt, I feel that Congress should acknowledge the recipients of this debt as prime creditors. So please read below. I'm assuming that what I've written, and hopefully what I'm about to say, will change lives, because it's about making life better for us all. But we have to specifically start with this one particular issue, which addresses one subset of America. Simple as that. And this is what was quoted from the original article in regards to what I was referencing initially. The wealth produced by slavery transformed the United States from an economic backwater into an economic and military dynamo, says Gilpin, also author of John Brown Still Lives, America's Long Reckoning with Violence, Equality, and Change. And I'll repeat, the wealth produced by slavery transformed the United States from an economic backwater into an economic and military dynamo. Wow. African Americans came to America as part of a business deal. It's obvious, right? Of course it has to be. Slavery was a business deal between Africans and America. Africans who eventually became African Americans were investors or independent contractors. And like any investor who invests their capital, both human and monetary, they expect a return on their investment or an ROI, return on investment, or short ROI, especially considering this business deal, which some may argue and history has confirmed was a forced business endeavor against the will of the investor or independent contractors, i.e. the slaves. This business deal also brought along a benefits package that included beatings, death, rape, mothers snatched from children never to be seen again, mothers forced to have sex with their own sons, hence the phrase motherfucker, mothers snatched from children never to be seen again, excuse me, I repeated myself, fathers hung from trees for no reason and castrated in some cases, with their ears cut off in some cases as well, while being displayed as trophy pieces, and a plethora of other atrocities I can't begin to adequately document. So this return on investment, or outstanding invoice, however you want to frame it, has to be owed to African Americans, right? I don't understand why African Americans were forced to agree to such a business deal. But I guess that's the African blood within that ancestry that made them pursue the business endeavor of slavery and not negotiate better terms. Who knows? So since we, as the descendant of African American slaves, haven't received the return on investment or haven't been paid for services rendered for our ancestors' services, I understand why crime and poverty in the black community are at eye-popping statistics. I also see why the net worth of African Americans, as shown by the graph provided by Pew Research Center, which is on my Facebook page, is alarmingly low. Or there's a vast disparity between certain groups in terms of wealth in this country. Oh, that's right. I can't forget about after slavery or emancipation. There were peonage laws in the South and civil rights struggles nationwide, which came immediately after slavery. Let's not forget about the atrocities of Black Wall Street or even Rosewood, and these are just two moments in American history that probably scraped the surface of injustices towards African Americans post-slavery. So now, I can sufficiently identify the root of the plights that plague the black community in America. Slavery. This is my opinion. Slavery was at the start of this whole mess. I mean, how can we as African American race begin to accumulate generational wealth when it couldn't possibly have begun to amass until after emancipation, or even as late as civil rights legislation in the 60s in some regard? In that scenario, that would mean wealth for a large number of African American families began with people my parents' age, compared to other American families whose descendants didn't even participate in slavery that might have generational wealth which began to accumulate as early as 1776 when America won its independence. That scenario is being generous, might I add. This is very sad and beyond unfair, yet it is also quite promising. Now it can provide a solution to help out the black community to get on its feet until their return on investment or outstanding accounts receivable is paid. And an accounts receivable is the opposite of accounts payable. If you have an accounts payable, normally the individual that you owe has an accounts receivable, so they're waiting to be paid. And that is normally on the debit side of the balance sheet, known as an accounts receivable. And yes, America, this payment is due in full because of the widely accepted fact that slavery turned America into an economic power that it still is today, as Gilpin noted in his article. That is what I call an undisputed fact, okay? I also can't dispute that as a leader, I am to blame for not getting this matter handled sooner. I have failed, it's the truth, I accept that responsibility. Until this point, to help curb the ill effects of poverty on the African American community. For that, I truly apologize. Sorry, the phone was starting to act up. So now that we're all clear, here's the plan. First, any and every African American or descendant of slaves needs to refer to reparations as a return on our ancestors' investment, or ROAI, or an outstanding accounts receivable matter. Second, and most importantly, don't go bothering anyone who is of Caucasian blood or of European American descent at all. I don't care if they adorn the Confederate flag, spew racist epithets, and even boast on their position of agreeing with slavery. I repeat, please, do not bother any white people or demand anything from them. This is not about hate or getting even. Furthermore, there isn't a single living man or woman who has owned slaves in America right now, nor has participated in slavery. That's just the truth. This is a business and economic matter on a macro scale, which means there is literally no dollar amount that can settle this debt. So I hope and quite honestly demand all African Americans stay professional as we as a people seek payment for services rendered or a return on our ancestors' investment. Second, if you are an African American who is at the mercy of poverty, read this statement below or listen to what I have to say. And how do you know if you're at the mercy of poverty or not, you ask? Who cares? Read it anyway, listen, and find out. And this is free, might I add, what I'm about to tell you. It's not your fault. Yes, you need to pull up your pants. And yes, you need to not have babies while you yourself are still a child. And yes, you need to go to school every day. And yes, you need to try to do your best. And yes, you need to do your best. And yes, you need to do homework every day in order to make sure that trying to do your best can turn into doing your best. And yes, you need to go to college or an equivalent school of trade. And yes, being smart is the best thing going. And yes, you need to love, respect, and support all of the women in your life. And yes, the women in your life include all women you come across. And yes, you need to respect and support all the men in your life. And yes, it takes respect to earn respect. And yes, you need to support your peers, lovers, family, or friends when they are up and when they are down. And yes, you need to talk it out and fight it out before you shoot it out. And yes, you need to never shoot it out. And yes, you need to fight it out if you want to shoot it out. And yes, ass whippings, they're good for those when you need them from time to time. They are. At least you live and you learn from it. And to me, it's way more effective than killing. That's just me. And yes, you need to apologize and admit when you're wrong. And yes, you need to forgive more. And yes, you need to stop robbing, killing, and selling dope. And yes, honesty is always the best policy. And yes, that's the true and only meaning of keeping it 100. And yes, you need to reinvest in your community. And yes, you need to never litter in your community. And yes, I meant it when I said never litter. And yes, you need to eat a balanced diet with vegetables and fruits every day. And yes, it takes money. And yes, you don't have any. And yes, your mother doesn't have any. And yes, most, if not all of the men in your life might be in jail, dead, struggling themselves, or not around at all. And yes, you might be asked and probably forced to join a gang. And yes, you might be forced to sell dope. And yes, you need to graduate and go to college or trade school and not sell dope so you won't ever have to sell dope. And yes, the cards have been stacked against you economically for generations. And yes, you can make it out. And yes, you can do better. And yes, it's hard when you have to drop out of school to take care of your family. And yes, I know I want you to go to a school that probably has inadequate resources to learn. And yes, I know you might not have lights in your house to read, so you're forced to hustle to have money to pay the light bill. Feed your little brother or sister because your mother is strung out, or is terminally ill with no insurance, or works 3 jobs, or cares about the club more than you joining the chess club. And yes, there are people in your same position, and in some cases even worse positions, that have overcome those obstacles and made it to a better life. And yes, to accomplish that is easy to some, hard to many. And yes, many have tried, few have succeeded, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, have failed. And yes, you are more likely to go to jail than you are to graduate. And yes, those people who have made it out and are productive mostly focus on pointing a finger instead of providing the solution. And yes, even though they need to cool that shit out, they're right in most cases. And yes, when I say cool that shit out, because I mean, a lot of people, they do help, but a lot of people don't. Now, trust me, I'm a college graduate. I look at all spectrums. I hear it all sides. A lot of people just are proud to identify the problem, but don't offer any tangible goals. And this is what I'm about to say to them. And yes, when I say cool that shit out, I mean to say just because you're a productive citizen from the black community doesn't mean you too don't contribute to the problem, when all you can do is criticize and offer blanket solutions with no clear means of implementation in order to invoke positive change. And yes, people are scared to take on this task because modern society is about ease, comfort, and individuality, not community, until there is a disaster. And yes, this task is daunting, but totally worth it to me. Hey, gotta live for something. And yes, I'm sending this letter to every person I know, or in this case, this video to every person I know and don't know around the world, and embarking on this journey because of the culmination of this point, which is as follows. Yes, you can do anything in life you want to, good or bad. All of these issues that plague the black community stem from generations of poverty, which ultimately has its roots ingrained in the longest unpaid business debt in United States history, called slavery. Until America makes good on compensating their biggest investor historically for services rendered, who are the descendants of slaves, i.e. African Americans, then the black race will continue to deal with the core issues that plague our community: poverty and crime. Which are poverty and crime. That's just a fact. These kids in Philadelphia, Chicago, Baton Rouge, they're poor. They're black. Okay? Poverty and crime, they're killing each other. And if we're talking about gun debates, I'm sorry. This can't go under the rug. This can't. Martin Luther King Day coming up, he fought for poverty. That's when he was killed. He was having a war on poverty. Come on, y'all. That's just real. The black community is plagued by poverty and crime. Furthermore, the desire, need, and the all-important pace of change and progress will continue to move at the snail's pace we see today. And it seems to me that the pace of despair is leading the pace of progress. That's just me. Maybe the numbers tell me otherwise. I doubt it. Just look at Chicago. So I'm assuming the 40 acres and a mule, even during Lincoln's era, was a down payment on the return on our ancestors' investments for the core investors of U.S. slavery, the slave. Therefore, since the return on our ancestors' investment has been a zero return and interest has accumulated at a staggering rate, America has a huge debt that is far greater than the debt ceiling debate. Unlike the compensations granted to my Native American brothers and sisters for the atrocities caused by America against those people, unlike the compensation granted to my Asian American brothers and sisters after the backlash of Pearl Harbor, and unlike the compensation awarded to my Jewish American brothers and sisters, including the citizens of Israel after the Holocaust and beyond, unlike those atrocities, there isn't a magic number that can settle this particular debt that I'm referring to. No, unfortunately, we're beyond numbers at this point. No, I'm thinking along the lines of net worth enhancements. So, what are net worth enhancements? Here's what I'm specifically requesting as follows. First, grant every African American perfect credit scores from all three credit bureaus while forgiving all current and long-term debt from all respective creditors. Secondly, grant all African American families access to free college education. Third, grant all African Americans tax-free working income for at least 2 generations per family. Number 4, grant the immediate release of all drug-related African American offenders with expunged records of all drug-related offenses only upon release, with the exception of drug traffickers, because I'm assuming if you're moving drugs across state lines, you're making a lot of money doing that. That's a highly lucrative career. As well as do not allow violent offenders to get out at all. If you're committing violent offenses and trafficking drugs, you do not need to be released from jail. You need to serve your time. However, if you're selling drugs, you're selling crack in your community because you're poor and you're trying to just make sure your family is fed, or you're selling marijuana, or you're doing things to make sure that you're taking care of your immediate needs, then I believe that due to the economic status of your situation, you are forced into that particular lifestyle. That's my opinion. If the statistics or the cases prove otherwise, then we need to reevaluate that, because that's highly controversial. But I think it's still fair. I expect these concessions to be granted, but I'm open for negotiation. For example, we can limit the pool of recipients to those whose net worth is in line with the Pew Research Center's data. Again, that graph is on my Facebook page, as well as what is documented on their tax return. I don't know, that's something that might be up for debate. These concessions should sufficiently appease the threshold needed to settle this past debt while having an effect only on future revenue. It will be both negative and positive, but it will adequately provide a fair return on our ancestors' investment for the most successful business endeavor economically in American history, which was slavery. For those who want a check or a lump sum payment, that's simply not feasible. It will bankrupt America, okay? In a matter of seconds. Like I said, there is neither a magic number that is worth a life, or in this case, millions of lives, nor a magic number that can appease the effects of slavery on generations of African Americans, whether it be psychological, physical, or emotional. If I ever saw my mother snatched away from me and I had to go live the life of a slave, and the only person I knew was my mother, it probably would have me psychologically thrown off, and it probably would sink into my bloodline, where the children I would have would be psychologically affected because of what I saw. And that's real for a lot of us. I mean, Django is a good movie, but a lot of that was true. Lincoln is a great movie. A lot of that is true. I mean, accurate to the T. So, now what are we going to do with all this information? You can read this or watch this and laugh it off. You can say I'm crazy. You can say whatever you like. However, you can't say I'm wrong. If you think you can, please feel free to refute my claim. I'm like Charles Barkley. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. That's just my opinion. I'm all ears, though, for all refutation of this claim. If you think you can do it better, I happily welcome the idea of a better solution with open arms. In fact, please make this solution better. It may take a while to achieve this goal. If you're waiting on me, then life stays the same for a while. I'm only one man, but I'm here to help change the world and help make people's lives better. What better way to start that process than to help the very people closest to me? And for what it's worth, you can always do most of the things I suggested for free if you like starting right now. It doesn't take a dime to go to school, stop killing each other, and try to do better. All of that's free, but I am a realist. It will be a whole lot easier to accomplish if we receive the return on our ancestors' investment. If you want to help me speed this process up, forward this letter or this video to as many people you can, from young to old, from celebrities to companies, from local government to the top of offices of Washington, D.C. And in conclusion, look, I love everyone and I have no problem with any living soul. However, when I see a problem that I feel needs to be dealt with, I try to fix it. Poverty and crime in the black community is a problem for me. And thanks to people like Zuckerberg, the platform is available to realistically invoke positive change to tackle this issue in an expeditious fashion. I don't have to wait 20, 30 years for this. Matter of fact, people have been fighting way longer for this particular type of change. I've also started a petition on change.org in conjunction with using other means of getting this word out. I will hopefully start a petition on the whitehouse.org or .gov. I believe it's whitehouse.gov, I believe. And, ultimately, I apologize for not getting on the ball sooner. I thank you for your time. I hope you really consider what I'm saying as something that needs to be done just for the sake of, looking out for the community in which we see the majority of these violent crimes occurring on a daily basis. This is the only method that I see besides continuing to grow my business, generating a lot of money and putting a lot of money and just polarizing media behind getting this message out. But this is free. I'm on my cell phone. I can reach the world through my phone. This is free. These are the tools at our disposal that allow for us to really get a positive thing started and movement started. And I know if we can get Bank of America to not charge us fees because of this same type of energy, then I think that a life is way more important than a $5 bank fee. So I hope I can get everyone that sees this to get on board. And let's just try to change what I know could help out the one cause that I'm fighting for, which is decreasing crime in the black community initially. Now, I would like to take on crime worldwide, but I know that black young males killing other black young males at a staggering rate, where you're safer in Afghanistan than you are on the streets of Philadelphia. As a young black male, that's crazy. I mean, that's war. We're the greatest country in the world, and the greatest country in the world, seriously, y'all had a help from my ancestors, a lot of the other people's ancestors. And I'm not mad at whoever owned slaves. It's not about getting even at those people. It's just a fact that this was a business deal. And in any business deal, everyone needs to be compensated for services rendered, or in an investment scenario, return your investor what they expect based upon their investment. Human capital is a huge investment. I hope this message resonates with people. I hope we can get something done, and I will continue to strive to not only assist those that I feel are in need, but those people everywhere that are in need. But this is my starting point, and I think it's fair. I think I'm not being biased in any capacity, just due to the fact that this country owes it to the ancestry line, or at least to individuals that are suffering from poverty and crime that I figure can be attributed to the root of slavery. Thank you, and have a wonderful 2013 and beyond.